think Zuckerberg testifying in front of the Senate, right? These guys are still like, how do you fix my Wi-Fi, Mr. Zuckerberg?
Hi, I'm Ian Bremmer, and welcome to the GZERO World Podcast.
And this week for our big interview, I spoke in front of a live audience to Nick Thompson. He's the editor-in-chief of Wired magazine and correspondent at CBS News. We talked about keeping iPads out of the hands of children, Mark Zuckerberg and why we should or shouldn't believe him. We'll see. And AI and what the hell we should do as the U.S. government and as citizens. Let's go to bed now.
The GZERO World is brought to you by our founding sponsor, First Republic. First Republic, a private bank and wealth management company. Imagine a bank without teller lines, where your banker knows your name and its most prized currency is extraordinary client service. Hear directly from First Republic's clients by visiting firstrepublic.com.
As a guy who runs a magazine that needs advertising revenue, which is kind of the Facebook model too, how did it feel saying, I'm going to go after a guy that could provide a lot of advertising revenue?
That's an interesting question, and it's actually the conflict is much harder than that, because not only does Facebook provide advertising revenue, Facebook controls the algorithm which determines whether anybody sees your stories. So the risks that we were taking, Facebook could destroy us in the algorithm, and you just have to, as a journalist, you have to not think about that stuff. You have to write the best stories you can, and if they end up being positive, they're positive. If they're critical. And you hope that in the long run, by being as accurate as possible, people will want to advertise in you.
And you said it was prescient.
It was prescient, yes. I mean, we put Zuckerberg bruised and bloodied on our cover that came out in January, and then everything bad happened in February and March. I mean, the story was about the 2 years, it's called the 2 years that shook Facebook and the world, and it was an investigation into what happened at Facebook during the 2016 election, how they responded to it, and all the turmoil there building up to their realization that they'd been, hacked by the Russian government, and how they responded to that. So there are a bunch of things that are happening at Facebook, right? And there are a number of critiques that have kind of come together. One, there's the Facebook is invading your privacy, right? They know that you're a dog, they know where you do your doggy business, right? There's Facebook is addictive, right? And so Facebook actually, we have more power on our phones than Ronald Reagan had at his disposal 25 years ago, and yet the phones make us unhappy. Why is that? It's because the companies that make the products we use on our phones made their services addictive as opposed to useful, right?
So maximizing engagement is addiction.
That's the critique. We can discuss that in more detail, but that critique, which has been building and is partly true, has been building at the same time that the privacy argument has been building, and then the Facebook is a monopoly argument has been building. So these things come together, and there's been a lot of pressure on Facebook in the last few months.
How comfortable do you feel with your kids having access to smartphones as they grow?
Not. I mean, it's funny. A lot of the tech leaders in Silicon Valley have to keep their kids off social media until they're older. I mean, I hope, my kids are 9, 7, and 4. My hope is that they'll stay off smartphones until they're 12 or 13. I mean, I don't mind them having dumb phones that they can, just dial my number and I can track them. I did have one funny story. I gave my oldest son, Ellis, access to, I agreed that he could search Google unsupervised if he and I built a Raspberry Pi. It's a little plastic computer together. So we built it, and then I let him do Google unsupervised. And the next morning, of course, checked the logs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And was all like, how get parents buy Tesla versus Honda Odyssey. And so I was very proud that he was searching for car information instead of other things that young boys search for.
Specifically said how to get my parents to buy?
It was buy price Tesla, S versus Honda Odyssey, seats, all kind of, it was crazy.
It wasn't how to steal.
No, it was not how to steal.
That's
but
good.
To your question, it's not just the addiction, which is one issue, and I think sometimes it's overstated, but it is a real thing. It's the bullying and all the other things that come along with social media, because it does tend to, in certain ways, bring out the worst in us.
Do you think that these companies can be champions of liberal democracy?
It's an extremely interesting question for a number of reasons. Number one, the titans who run these companies are in large part liberal Democrats, and they all believe in American values, and they're all American companies. And it is interesting that they all are American companies, that this country did create. All the big companies in the world are made in China or the US, right? Europe has still not produced any. The rest of the world has not produced anything anywhere. They all do care a lot about the United States, but the problem is they are such monopolists, they do have such beliefs in their own self-righteousness that their ultimate outcome and effect, as we saw with Facebook, will not ultimately be what they thought it would be when they started these things.
Now, you say they are monopolists. Is that...
Yeah, I used a pretty charged phrase here right there. Yeah.
Is that a problem?
So, okay, that is another complicated layered question. Thank you, Ian. So, they have monopoly power, right? Google certainly has monopoly power in search. Facebook certainly has monopoly power in social. You know, Apple and Google together have duopoly power in operating systems on phones. Amazon, right? You know, so it's not 100% pure monopoly, but it certainly reached tradition. It doesn't reach the legal threshold where they should be broken up, because basically in this country, right, monopoly law is on whether you raise prices on consumers, and Amazon, you can accuse it of a lot of things, but not of raising prices. Facebook is free, Google is free. In fact, the only monopoly lawsuit against Amazon was it was against the publishing industry, right? And Amazon was the good guy and the publishing was the bad guy, which is hilarious in retrospect. But the real problem with the competitive power, and the thing that I worry about, is that because they have monopolies on information, they have near perfect insight into any potential competitors, right? So because Google owns Android and Apple owns iOS, and Facebook has basically bought intermediary companies that give them all the information they would have, they know everything anybody is doing on any of those platforms. So if I create a social media app, if you're a media company, if you create a social media app out of your media company and it starts to grow, Facebook will know that before you do, because it will have all the data on how people are using it, exactly how they're using it, and they'll have the best algorithms to analyze it. So you'll be sitting here thinking, oh, this is pretty good, and Zuckerberg will call up and say, okay, I'm going to buy you, and I'm going to pay twice as much as you think you're worth, and you will accept, or you won't, and then he will copy you and kill you, right? And that is what we see constantly, right? And that's what they're doing to Snapchat right now. It's why Facebook bought this weird thing I'd never even heard of, and I'm the editor of Wired, called TBH in August. It's why they bought Instagram.
Do you want to tell us what TBH is? Or is it too wonky?
It's a social network that kids were using that Facebook bought and then incorporated, and now it's gone away, right? I mean, if they see a threat, right, they're going to buy it or kill it.
Facebook the most important reason in technology that Trump won?
Yes, but not for the reason you think. It was extremely effective for advertising.
How do you know what the reason I think was?
You would never have a common argument, Ian. I've known Ian for 20
argument.
years.
Go for it.
There's a common argument that Facebook led to Trump's election by allowing the spread of fake news. That is true that Facebook allowed the spread of fake news. That is not why Trump won. It is a more true argument that Facebook, by segmenting us into filter bubbles, helped lead to some of the political dynamics that you just described.
Filter bubbles where people like...
You only know people who support Trump, or you only know people who support Hillary, or you break it down further and further. That was certainly massively more influential in helping Trump than the fake news stuff. And then third, Facebook's ad buying mechanism was basically how Trump ran his fundraising campaign, or one of his main mechanisms. And so what he did is use this incredibly powerful tool that Facebook has called lookalike audiences. So somebody buys a hat, you get their email address, you then take the email address, you put it into your database, and it will tell you every other person in the country who is similar to the person who bought your hat. And so then you have a great database of potential Trump voters. It's a wonderful ad targeting tool. You can use it to find banking customers. You can use it to find people who will buy more hats or vote for you or go to your rallies. And that was an extremely effective tool for Trump. So Facebook was a great tool for Trump, but mostly because he just was smart about how he bought his ads.
Do you think that Facebook was unaware of these challenges? Were they indifferent to them because they're making a lot of money? I mean, what is it? The challenges of being manipulated much more effectively by political forces, both domestic and international.
I think they were naive. I think that they were naive about the ways their platform could be used for bad. I think that Mark Zuckerberg, and to a lesser degree Sheryl Sandberg, but to some degree, genuinely believes that Facebook is a new evolution, sort of a new step in the evolution of humankind in the way we communicate, and it's the thing that will lead to kind of globalism squared, right? It will allow people across the world, even if they speak different languages, to communicate. Our shared humanity will come across, and that basically the more people who use Facebook, the better the world will get along. And they believe that at their core. If Mark Zuckerberg has believed anything over the last 10 years, it is that Facebook will harmonize and make the world a better place. And I think when you have that as your core belief, it's hard to realize that, wait, this is dividing people and it's turning American politics into what American politics turned into.
How worried do you think the Americans should be, and how much should it affect our policies on whether or not we want to regulate, allow monopolies to behave in context of a Chinese system that's promoting these companies.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? So I feel like these companies are monopolies. I feel like there's a real danger in the power they've accumulated. And the last thing I want is our government to break them up because A, we'll completely screw it up. I don't trust our Justice Department to understand technology at all. I don't trust them to understand where technology was 5 years ago, much less 5 years from now. So I can want these companies to be broken up for the sake of competition, but I don't want our government to do it, right? Think Zuckerberg testifying in front of the Senate, right? These guys are still like, how do you fix my Wi-Fi, Mr. Zuckerberg, right? It's not. There's that, and then there's B. There is this big question that you and I have talked about, which is the Chinese government is taking all of its effort and trying to help shape the Chinese governments and shape their technological evolution and put their might and power behind it. And we're here, our government's just kicking them in the shins. So it's very different. And I would like the future of technology to be shaped more by the United States, less by China. And so to have that happen, I don't think having our government, break up the tech companies where Sundar Pichai spend the next 5 years at Senate hearings is going to do any good.
How do you think, here in the audience, lives are going to change in ways that people haven't necessarily expected because of these technological advances in the next, say, 5-10 years?
Besides, human brain-computer interfaces that'll make us live forever?
Yeah, that's later.
Later, okay.
Yeah.
We ran a story that I think is going to come in the next 5 years that was kind of amazing, which was about a guy, he's a coder. He's good at coding chatbots, and his father is dying. And so he records 100 hours of conversation with his father. His father's stories, the way his father speaks. And he creates a chatbot that can talk just like his dad. And he plays it for his mother right before his father dies. And his mother, that's convincing. And then that's how his children are going to remember their grandfather, is talking to this chatbot. And so the capacity for us to live on, so in some ways it will change, it's changing dating, obviously. Now it's going to change death.
You want one of these?
Do I want one of those? Yeah, I think I want one of those. I would have liked one for my father.
Yeah. So you think, would you do one now for your kids just in case?
Not just in case. That would be too mordant to do it.
Yeah.
And also, this is recorded. My kids are going to be fine. They're going to be able to.
Yeah, we'll have some.
They'll be able to watch this.
Yeah. So what you did, when you said that you thought the Americans, you don't want them to regulate too much, you want them to engage with the private sector, but you didn't suggest, I think there's some things the Americans could do to throw resources at, right? Whether it's education, or which is an easy one, or whether it's build infrastructure that's going to be relevant for this stuff, smart cities, in other words, big stuff that only governments can. What are there such things, or would you rather the U.S. government stays away?
No. Look at how we've dealt with science, right? You can have research grants for quantum computing. There are whole elements of it that the tech companies can build. There are whole parts of it that depend on basic science. So you could have much, larger funding for the National Science Foundation, NIH, et cetera. You could fund our public institutions. Immigration, right? A lot of the best AI researchers are moving to Toronto, right? Because of our immigration policies. So there is all kinds of national policy. You could also, one of the things that I'm not sure exactly how to do, but I think would be very smart if you could figure out how to do it, is AI depends on data, right? The more data you have, the better AI systems you can build. Google has all the data, right? Facebook has all the data. Amazon has all the data. Apple has most of the data, but they're a little wary about using it. You can imagine the government figuring out a way to compile public data sets that allow other companies to have access to data to train their AI on. So in a way, you have your private data, we're not going to take it apart.
So Library of Congress exponentially.
Library of Congress exponentially for AI training for other companies so you can have competition with the big tech players.
Is it conceivable in your mind that in 5-10 years the American government might be able to do these sorts of things?
Yeah, totally. It probably won't happen under Trump, but it could easily happen under a different Republican or a different Democrat.
So if as the American government, should we either be harnessing Google and others like we did with the military companies, or investing ourselves?
Yep. We should be massively investing in supporting quantum computing. Probably, it depends at what level, right? Quantum computing is a huge physics problem, right? You need to get the temperature down to absolute zero. You need to be building in places that don't get vibrations from the Earth or no light. There's all kinds of problems in quantum computing, but there are all kinds of scientific questions that the government should be helping support. In fact, the government should probably be trying to build its own quantum computers. I certainly hope the Defense Department is trying to build its own quantum computers because they'll be very useful for encryption. And if there isn't a Defense Department quantum computer and some, black line DoD budget item, then they're making a mistake.
Do you have any reason to believe that is or is not occurring?
I have no information.
Not information. I'm just wondering, like, in terms of where scientists are going and all that kind of stuff.
I haven't seen any indication that the Defense Department is doing it, except for I had one very smart roommate of mine who was like, they've done it. I was at a conference recently.
Is there a lot of consumption going on in that conversation? Or?
No, this is like an important physicist. And he's like, oh yeah, they have it. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's
Like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Alec Jones, I saw it.
You figure this out for me, will you?
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope they're working on it. I doubt they have it.
Last thing I want to ask you before we go to Q&A, which is jobs.
Yes.
I mean, everyone talks about this. Mm-hmm. Some people extremely dire. Some people saying, no, it's going to be amazing for everybody, rainbows and sunshine. Mm-hmm. Where are you on that spectrum?
I am sunny and 60. Sunny and 60 with some clouds.
Sunny and 60 with some clouds.
Yeah, I mean.
So tonight, but not today.
I mean, there is going to be displacement for sure, as you said. But the overall question of whether technology will create more jobs, I think it will. And the data suggests, I don't know, people were terrified of ATMs replacing bank tellers. There are more bank tellers now than there were when we introduced ATMs. I feel like that pattern will continue, and that there will be lots of people who lose their jobs. The government probably won't do a great job of helping them. There will be more turmoil. But in the long run, I think our relationship to technology will be like it has been for the last 80 years, which is mostly beneficial.
Look at that. That is the way I want to close, mostly beneficial. Everybody, please thank this man, Nick Thompson, Wired Magazine.
That's it this week. Next week, Harvard professor Steve Levitsky, Why Democracies Die. Kind of a downer, right? No, he's an upbeat and lively guy, and we're going to talk about how the world is coming apart. You won't want to miss it.
The GZERO World is brought to you by our founding sponsor, First Republic. First Republic, a private bank and wealth management company. Imagine a bank without teller lines, where your banker knows your name and its most prized currency is extraordinary client service. Hear directly from First Republic's clients by visiting firstrepublic.com.
You're listening to the GZERO World with Ian Bremmer podcast, your weekly geopolitical deep dive into the world's biggest news stories, featuring in-depth conversations with global leaders and newsmakers. To get more of GZERO's insights on global politics every morning, sign up for our free newsletter, GZERO Daily, at gzeromedia.com.